Welcome to 10 Talks, real conversations for champions with champions, where a champion life is a 10 life. Thank you for joining our team today. I'm Carlette Patterson, your head sports life coach at the Life Training Academy, and it's our desired outcome to share our passion for sports life coaching by training you to live a 10 life. You and your life matter. Let's get coached. Hi, team. Welcome to 10 Talks. It's another day that we get to talk to another champion for change, having those conversations that are really about how do we step up into the life that we want to live and be our best self, our 10 self, as we refer to it. So today, our guest is Rory Clark, and we are excited to really welcome him and let you get to know another one of our champions. So Rory, welcome, and tell us a little bit about your story.
Thanks, Carlette. Well, I grew up in the ghettos of Chicago. I was raised by a single mom. When she was 38 years old, she had 2 divorces under her belt. She had 4 kids under the age of 11, 2 of them under the age of 2. I was one of those 2 guys. And she was making $14,000 a year. And so from a very early age, I had to make a choice about whether I wanted to die in the ghetto or if I wanted to live. And I chose to live. And so my life has unfolded as a series of very gracious people showing up in my life and pointing me the way to the top. And just really happy about that. So one of the funny things when you escape from the ghetto, people always say, man, you forgot where you came from. And, that's like saying that Jesus Christ is going to forget that he hung on the cross. You don't forget that. You have the nail marks and you have the slash mark in your side, and you never really forget that. And I think that initial adversity has informed everything in my life, because I realized that there's nothing that I can't overcome if I put my mind to it. And everything I've ever put my mind to, I've accomplished. So that's kind of my story.
Rory, that is a beautiful story. And today, team, we are talking about just the power of relationships. And our topic today is relationships and finances. So we thought that was a good place to start, because a lot of us really wonder, how do we do this relationship with finances? How do we do it in our personal, our professional, and our philanthropic life? And Rory, your story is very much about the power of team. I love hearing that there are people in your life that stepped in and really became part of your life team and helped you to become the man that you are today. And one of my favorite components of you and your heart is just your deep, deep passion to help others and to give back. So as we talk about relationships and finances, I want to start with the philanthropic dimension. You have a great heart. You are a champion giver. I'd love for you to share just a bit about your story of how you chose to invest in yourself and then invest back financially in terms of being a giver to the places that really mean the most to you and are attached to the power of your story.
Well, let's start with the giving to others. I think we attach a lot of terms to being philanthropic. We say we need to give back, and it's so funny how we adopt these little expressions and then you hear everybody saying, well, we need to give back. But to me, giving is who I am. It's something that has always been a part of my life. And it's not something that all of a sudden it hits you one day, oh my goodness, I should give back. It's just that at a point in your life, you realize that you've bought everything that you could possibly buy, and anything else you buy is just pretty stupid. You also realize you're not going to take any of the money with you. I have a funny story. My uncle, just before he died, he told my brothers and sisters, I have 2 brothers and a sister. He told us that he kind of believed in what the Egyptians believed in, that you needed to take things into the afterlife. So he told each of us to put a $500 bill in his casket. And so my older brother did, and then my sister did, and my younger brother did. And I went up and I took the $1,500 and I wrote him a check. So that was
Talk
the
about being a
beginning.
giver.
That was the beginning of my financial future. But the word philanthropic comes from two Greek words: philos, which means brotherly love, like the city of Philadelphia, and anthropos, which means man. So when you're being philanthropic, what you're doing is expressing your love for mankind. And that's not a new concept to me. It's just something that I've always felt, and it was the gratitude that I felt for all the people who reached in and gave me a hand as I was coming up, because the people that helped me didn't have to help me.
Right.
I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
I'm a nobody from nowhere. They didn't have to help me, but they did. And somebody paid my way through Northwestern University. Somebody paid $17,500 for me to go to Northwestern University for 4 years. I don't have the slightest idea who it is, but a large part of my estate is going to Northwestern University. And that person that did that unknown person, would be really proud that I took what was given to me and then provided it to the next generation. So giving is the biggest no-brainer in life as far as I'm concerned, because I don't think you get anything unless you give.
So team, I challenge you, we challenge you to really dive into the power of your story. Think about who's given you hope and how do you want to give hope in return. We know that from our work, it's not just about giving money. That's just one aspect of it. So much about giving hope is just that power that each one of us have the ability to go for what matters to us, to live this life of on purpose and full of just being there for others, paying it forward, paying it backwards, however we want to say it. We really just want to step up and give hope. And so, Roy, you give hope so much every day. It's just in your DNA. Tell us about who gave you hope and how you got started just really anchoring in this. Your whole life is about hope.
Well, it is. So my dad left my mom 30 days after they got married. When she told him that she was pregnant, he left. So I really don't have a speck of my dad inside of me. So I was raised by women, and I became a bat boy for the White Sox when I was 17 years old. And there are a lot of things I remember about that experience, but one of the things that I remember most about it was the first time that I was around man energy. And man energy is very different from female energy. And so, these guys would nail my shower shoes to my locker floor. They would cut every other stitch in my pants so that when I'd sit down, my pants would break. They would pinch my chest and, punch me and stuff like that, take stuff that I had and break it. And so I spent most of the time that I was a bad boy for the White Sox coming home crying because I didn't understand that form of affection.
Wow.
But in retrospect, it was one of the best things that ever happened to me, because it was the thing that started me to realize that I had to orient to male energy just as I oriented to female energy. And it really helped me when I got into my career, because 95% of my bosses have been male. And so being oriented to females, if I was going to be successful in business, and 95% of the time I was orienting to males, I had to learn how to orient to males. Right. So that was a great kickoff experience for that.
And so you started to be a champion giver and started giving hope. Tell us about just how you got into that, how you wanted to make an impact based on your story.
Well, when I was 21 years old, one of the things about me is I've always been very focused. And I always knew what I wanted to do and what I didn't want to do. And much more initially, what I didn't want to do.
We call that winning strategies, by the way. We talk about with our team, winning strategies are what works and what doesn't work. And we really learn the most from what doesn't work. I mean, that's what's really powerful.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I
Yeah,
call
it's the
those
truth.
I call those anti-goals.
Okay, good
Rory,
job.
what do you want to do? Well, I don't know, but I don't want to do
Yeah.
that. And so what I didn't want to do is I didn't want to be like my brothers and sisters because they didn't listen to my mom.
Hmm.
And I looked at their lives and I said, that really doesn't work. So I'm going to listen to my mom and see what kind of life I can make of it. And that was a winning formula. But when I was 14 years old, my mom gave me an assignment, and it was to read the book How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.
Hmm.
And she said, I want you to read that book once a month for 12 months.
Wow, that's a training. That's life training. Yeah.
Like, what? She said, well, you're riding on the train all the time, and you can either read or you can sit there and stare at people. So why don't you just read? And then at the end of 12 months, we're going to have a conversation about it. Well, the whole focus of the book is other focus, them first, then you. Stop thinking of yourself all the time and think of other people. Get behind other people's eyes and see life from their point of view. So when you do that, then giving is just natural after that. So this was something that was ingrained in me at a very early age to have empathy and to see things from others' point of view. And I'll tell you that it is a tremendous formula for success because let's say when I want to call and complain about a customer service experience, I don't call and say, you guys oughta, and blah, blah, blah. I'll call and say, this is not Marriott quality. I've been going to Marriott's for 25 years, and 99% of my experiences have been exactly the opposite of this.
Wow.
So I'm going to ask you for something, and I just want you guys to step up and do what you always do. It's a whole different way to come at it. And people respond really well to that. So giving just became a part of who I am. So, somebody's talking about, I think I was telling you that when I was 21 years old, I became a teacher, and I learned that teacher is who I am, not just something that I do.
Yeah.
And so the teacher in me shows up in every situation, and teachers affect eternity, and they can never tell where their influence stops, according to Henry Brooks. And so that has been my experience of life. I'll have a conversation with you and you're talking about something you're doing. I said, well, how can I help? And genuinely want to help and genuinely inject myself to help, and just to help people get on a path, because it's easy to do because people did that for me.
Well, huge winning strategy, just being a giver and being there for people and just playing a small role in something bigger than ourselves. And, really each person is different how we can help. So the good news is the formula can be interesting. It can be different. It can be unique. It can just be making sure that we're available to really be there for whoever needs us. And so let's move into the professional dimension of relationships with finances. You've been very successful. You are very successful. You've had the opportunity to learn a lot professionally in terms of how to have this relationship with finances. So tell us a little bit about your winning strategies, just what works, what doesn't work.
Well, I think that we all have a relationship with money, and that's what I call finances. So what is our relationship with money? If you're in Japan, the way people talk about their income is it is discretionary. If you're in the United States, the way we talk about our income is disposable. So as soon as the money comes in, we have to find we have to find a way to dispose of it. That's so crazy. So that was not my philosophy. So one of the people who helped me a long time ago said, Rory, whenever you get a check, pay yourself first, 10% of the check. Why? Well, because that's the way you save. So one dimension of finances is saving. Well, my savings is my first bill every month. I get the check, I pay the savings as a bill, and that account is untouchable. What that means is I'm going to live out of 90% of my money, and 10%, do not touch it. Well, so I real quickly amassed $10,000, and I thought, this is great. Well, I had $10,000 of credit card debt. So what did I do? I touched it.
Yeah.
He said, don't touch it, but I touched it. I took the
Performance
10,000.
barrier.
Exactly. Like a good American, I took my 10,000, I paid off my debt, and I had zero debt and zero savings. And then 2 weeks later, my credit cards were back up to 10,000.
Okay.
See? So that just
2
doesn't work.
zeros don't equal a win.
No, they don't. So untouchable is untouchable. So
Okay.
one dimension of finances is saving. Another dimension of finances is budget. And that means predict what you're going to spend in a year. And the intelligent person says, I'm not going to spend more than I make.
Another winning strategy.
It is. But today, the credit card companies will give somebody who makes 20 grand a year, $25,000 in credit, because that person's going to pay 25% interest a year and $35 every time they have a late fee. Yeah. And people just do it. Well, then you get into a hole. I have some friends who are asking you for some financial advice. They're a young married couple with 2 young kids, and they're in a $200,000 financial hole. How do you get out of that when you're paying 20% interest?
Right.
It's impossible. And the credit card companies are now required to put on there, if you paid the minimum payment, you would have to die and come back 16 times to pay this bill off.
Or win the lottery at this point. Yeah. So.
Well, yeah, and that's not a solution, because everybody who wins the lottery 3 years later, they're completely broke and worse off financially than they were when they bought than they won the lottery, because money is a mentality. And the first thing a lottery winner ought to do is take $3 million and put it in an index fund that kicks off 10% a year. So they'll have $3 million kicking off $300,000 a year. They'll never touch the $3 million, right, and they'll be able to live off the $300,000. They're set for life financially. But nobody's telling you that. And how was I going to know that coming out of the ghetto? My mom made 14 grand a year in her best income year. So she wasn't telling me.
And 4 kids, right? She had 4 kids to take care of.
I don't even know how she did it. Well, I kind of do. She fed us all sugar water, but I mean, that's all.
It's mom power. I'm telling you, moms have huge power. So that's our superpower.
They do. They're magic. I can't, that's the thing that I admire most about my mom, is I just didn't know how she could pull that off. Just the mentality it takes to pull that off is amazing.
It's called mom superpowers. Thank you, God, for that, right? We need it, so we got it.
Right. Yeah.
We figure out a way to take care of our little ones, so.
Yeah, you got a lot of experience with that.
3 fabulous little women too, so it's all good. I hope you're enjoying our conversation all about relationships and finances and just that currency, the power of that relationship with money. Well, if you're curious about getting coached and you'd like to go through a course for financial fitness to get your finances in shape, go to meq10.com. That's meq10.com. You have the opportunity to go through our financial fitness as an online course or at a coach and get coached. Enjoy the rest of our conversation.
So, so savings was first, budget was the next. So I know what the third thing is: break even. You need to know what your break even is every year. How much money do I need to make it? And the amount of money you need to make it includes your savings.
Right. So that's 10%. That's just part of the first bill.
That's exactly right. And then, the next dimension is an emergency fund. I like to have 6 months of salary set aside, because inevitably there will be a disaster like COVID.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people got caught off guard with this whole thing, and they're going to take a real big financial hit. But I haven't even had to touch my e-fund, but it's there. So there's a savings and there's a separate e-fund. But the thing that really saved me is the budget, because I knew that I had to stay within those parameters. And so I wasn't doing anything extravagant. And actually, because of the lack of travel and other things, a lot of expenses disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
which left a little extra in the budget. Well, if you're a disposable mindset, oh, I can spend that. I just swept it into my savings and swept it into my e-fund so that if I need it in the months coming up and something more unpredictable happens, I was set.
So
Right?
Rory, let's just talk about rookies, right? People that are just getting into this financial market. I mean, we have so many of us, even if we've been around a long time, we could be starting over based on, what's been going on with our world. So tell us about your failures and what you learned from them so that we can all just get real in terms of these conversations. And we've heard ideally what's a winning strategy and how to do it. Now let's talk about you and the failures and what you've learned.
Well, it's not ideally. This is the strategy. This is what
Period.
people,
We're going to put a
period.
period.
This isn't
Yes.
ideally. This is what you have to do if you want to be successful, but you're absolutely right. There are failures. So I lost 3 fortunes before I got to the point where my financial situation started to grow. Well, why is that? Because I didn't know anything. And so let's take investments as one of the jewels in the financial crown. So early on, I was picking stocks. I had a friend who told me, I just buy bonds and I get 7%. And I said, well, that's kind of ridiculous because you could get 15%. Well, I went after the 15%, and then the stock market crashed and I got killed. And he's just plodding along like a little tortoise with his 7%. And before you knew it, he had $4 million amassed and I had goose egg. So then I built up again and then did another stupid stock pick thing. Boom, crash. And then I did it a third time, crash. The third time is the charm, slow learner. But then I developed a philosophy of investment. Whatever I invest in has to go up, meaning it can never go down, and there's no risk. Well, what is that? Bonds. What is it? There's another instrument called an index fund, and it's based on a math principle called the law of regression to the mean. You just put money in it and forget it. It goes up, it goes down, but it always comes back to the mean, and it goes up at a 10% slant. And there's a great book by a guy named John Bogle called The Little Guide of Common Sense Investing. And when I read that, way too late in my life, I felt like I was stabbing myself in the heart the whole time. It says, oh, here's a financial mistake, did it? Financial mistake, did it?
Check,
financial
check,
did it?
check.
Did all those things.
Yeah.
I read some of Robert Kiyosaki's books. One of them is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I made one of the classic errors. And of course, right after I made the error, I read his book. But I bought a Mercedes-Benz cash, right? And I think it was $95,000 cash. And what Robert Kiyosaki says is, what you ought to do is take the $95,000 and buy a house, rent out the house, and then let the car payments come from the rent payments. And then at the end of 4 years, you'll have the car and the house.
And the house,
and all your money.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks a lot, buddy. That was about 3 months too late. But
living and learning, team, living and learning.
Well, that's right. And that's the whole thing. There are people in the world who have done all the failures and who know what to do. Those are the people who told me the things that I could do to get on the right road. But the right road started after 3 groping trial and error failures on my own, getting taken advantage of and the whole thing. And the problem is most people get discouraged from the 3 failures and then they don't get on the right road. I got mad about the 3 failures and I thought, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm never going to do that again.
I'm going to do something different. That part I know.
Exactly. Yeah. But each time I did something different, I failed. You know, one of the things that's kind of funny is people talk about our president, Donald Trump, and they talk about, well, he was bankrupt 3 or 4 times. Yeah, that's what happens with rich people. They make mistakes and then they figure out a way to come back, and then they make a mistake again and they figure out ways to come back. And I hear all that and I say, Well, what's unusual about that? There's nothing unusual about it. That's exactly how you learn.
Yeah.
But the key is he keeps getting back on the horse.
That's the key. That's the winning strategy. We've got to make sure that we are coming back. What are we learning? You know, and Roy, let's just talk about the power of risk, because we've got to go for the things that matter to us. And ideally, we want a great coach, teacher, mentor beside us listening. You know, we want to be great listeners. We want to learn from the people that have gone before us. We want to learn from their failures and be able to listen to them. But boy, we've got that drive in us to really want to do it ourselves, to kind of figure it out. Take us through just that process of how to live, how to learn, how to take the risk, and most importantly, how to come back smarter, better, just really engaged at a better level, bigger level, better level, most impactful.
Well, whatever I want to do in my life, I know that somebody's done it before.
Mm.
And I know that they've probably written a book about it.
Okay.
So I am an incessant book reader. I try to read a book a week. I realized something about myself recently, and that's that I like to have about 5 books going at a time. So
Just keeps it interesting.
it does. So I
Yeah.
don't just take one book and read it to the end and go to the next book. I just read several books at a time. And so when you read books, these books teach you things that you can do, and then you try it. So I've been reading a book about how to keep your money after retirement. You know, everybody talks about this point where you want to retire, which is the craziest concept in the world. Why would you build up 65 years of expertise and then go sit down for 25 years? I don't get it. I don't get it.
When you're at your peak, you know the most, you have the most to give in terms of, you know, hope and everything. Yeah, I'm right there with you.
Exactly, because the actuarial tables say that if you hit 65, you're probably going to hit 90. You can't phone it in for 25 years. All right, so I've been reading books about that, and through reading books about that, I came in contact with a lady who is with a company that has a lot of financial instruments. So I'm pretty wired financially. I'm pretty set in what I'm doing, but I listen to her every week. And she teaches me a new thing every week. And she had me exposed to a financial seminar. And I sat at a Zoom meeting all Saturday, listened to various speakers, and I learned so much. Well, one of the instruments she introduced wasn't good for me, but it was perfect for my sons. So they are 31 and 29, and they're going to invest $3,000 a year in this instrument for the next 20, 30 years. And when they retire, or when they get 65, they're going to have $100,000 a year for the rest of their lives. Wow. What? So you're going to invest about $100,000, and then the result is you're going to have $100,000 a year for the rest of your life. When you know when they hit 65, they're probably going to hit 90. They're both non-smokers, so they're probably going to live to be 90. And 25 years of $100,000. You know, I'm not a mathematician. What is that? 2.5 million?
It all works.
It does.
Yeah.
So, but what they have on their side is they're young.
Right.
Well, young people aren't thinking, man, if I set aside $3,000 a year for the next 30 years, I'm going to have $100,000 for the rest of my life when I get older. They're not thinking like that. They start thinking about that when they're 55. So you need to get this stuff in place early.
Right.
And when you do, you're going to be different from everybody else, because everybody else is going to be disposing, right? So that's what I always watched. You know, the lesson I learned from my siblings is they're doing that, so I'm going to do the opposite. Right. If everybody else is disposing, then you don't. And then you know you're on the right track. And there are all these people who have all these ideas and all these instruments that can get you a place that you never would have been able to get on your own. And so you take advantage of it. $3,000 a year is peanuts. And consistently, it turns into this big thing. So
power of knowledge, right? Power of learning from people, and most importantly, taking action on it. So Roy, let's move into our personal dimension, because we can financially, professionally get set in a job, know we're supposed to save, know we have all these things. we meet a partner or we start that personal life of ours. And it really matters about how both of us feel in this currency of finances. How do we, number one, get ourselves set up financially if we're on our own? And then when we start to come together in relationship with someone else, how do we do this kind of merger of currency that really sets all of us up for success?
Well, as you know, I'm the pastor of a Christian church. And so occasionally people ask me to perform wedding ceremonies, which I absolutely hate because, because at the wedding ceremony, it's all about love. You know, you see them looking at each other with these starry-eyed looks and everything, and oh, it's so romantic, and the
I'm
destination
a big
wedding.
fan of love and romance, I just gotta say.
So am I. So am I, but I don't think it sustains relationships, right? It's really good for the 3 years that it happens. It's sort of like when you're heating some charcoal and you put the lighter fluid on and you throw the match on, woof, it flames up. But that's not the point. The point is get the coals to catch, and the coals aren't flaming up. They're just steady, slow, steady burn. That's the love I like, and that's the passion I like. It's the slow, steady burn that's going to sustain you over the course of many years and many ups and downs. Because when you get married, you can't predict what the person is going to be like that you are with. My wife had bipolar illness. We didn't discover it until 10 years in. So when we were at the altar, nobody was, I had no idea. First of all, I didn't even know there was a thing called bipolar illness, and I certainly didn't know she had it, nor did she.
Nor did she. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, there's so much going on that's going to happen in our lives that's going to get revealed as we just step into living it.
That's exactly right. So anyway, I think that I don't like weddings a lot because I don't like the state of unreality that exists at the very beginning of a relationship. But here's what's true about relationships. One of the things that is going to be a foundation of the relationship is how the two of you handle finances. And when you're in a relationship with somebody who thinks it's their responsibility to get the money out as fast as it comes in, and you're not that way, then it sets up a conflict and a dispute that has to be resolved. Because think about how goofy this is. Taking your money, which is your money, and then valuing TJ Maxx and Target and Walmart more than you value your own financial security. Valuing shoes and clothes and cars and all that more than you value your financial security is not smart. You can never call that smart.
So, Roy, I want to dive into the value component, because I just think that is so connected to so much of our responses. And as we talk about finances and relationships from a currency perspective, let's unpack a bit of the value component.
Okay. So what do you mean by that?
So, I love what you said. I love you said, do we value Target over our own financial situation or stability? How do we value ourselves like that, like we want to, or like we know is so important, yet we're not really trained for that. We're not really taught that. I mean, there's advertising dollars 24/7 going on telling us the opposite. So how do we get in from a change perspective?
Well, we may not be formally trained in financial matters, but we are trained in the fundamental of these things, which is called choice. And we start knowing that at 2. When the kid's 2, they figure out that they are different from you, and they let you know by saying, "No, I won't."
Or
right?
mine.
Oh, absolutely. Kids are amazing at that. I always ask kids, "Oh, wait, you were absent the day they taught sharing in kindergarten? Can I have some of that steak?" "No." "Oh, you don't know how to share?" "All right. Have you ever been punched in the face?" "No, that's violence." Okay. So we have this thing called choice. All right. So Stephen Covey cracks me up. He reads every self-improvement book from 1900 till 1980. And the thing he found that was the same in all of them was they were all suggesting a very simple principle. There's a stimulus and there's a response. And what most people do is there's a stimulus and response, but he said there's a thing between the stimulus and the response. Oh, Stephen, what's that? Choice. We learned that at 2. You have choices. Yes or no. Right or wrong. All right, so you've got your money. There's the stimulus. Somebody paid you for work you did. And the response is shopping. But in the middle, there's a choice. All right? So the woman says, all right, I got my check. I earned my check. I deserve to have something nice. You're right. What do you want? I want a Coach purse. Awesome. You go to Coach. Coach is $450 purse. Oh, Coach has an outlet. They've got 1-year-old purses that were $450 purses a year ago and are now $90 purses. Go get your Coach purse. Just pay $90, not $450. And then when you're walking around, girl, is that a Coach purse? Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. Those are expensive. Sure are.
And I'm not going to take out the
receipt. Oh, look, I only paid $90. I'm not going to do that. Yeah, I paid $450. Right? But really, I paid $90. And so
so we've got choice from a currency perspective. We're talking about our personal life. We're coming together. We're, in love. We're ready to really build this life together. We're going to anchor it on choice. We're also going to anchor it on valuing what's important to us as a couple, for me as a person, the life that we want. Kind of take us through that.
Well, so this, in this Coach example, I value myself and simultaneously I value the relationship.
Right.
So if I'm going to make a choice for myself, I'm going to make sure that it also takes care of the relationship. And a $450 expenditure when you could do it for $90 doesn't value the relationship, because I'm going to participate with my partner in the building of a firm financial future that's going to have us accumulating $3 million that's kicking off $300,000 a year for the rest of our lives. And out of the 90%, that's going to come out of the 10% out of the 90%. We're going to use that money for the exact things we want, but as frugally as possible. Because there's no, if you want a pair of shorts, they go on sale.
Right.
Okay, now you know what the shorts are, and they go on sale. Nordstrom's, for example. I like Allen Edmonds shoes at $300 a pair, but in June and in December, they're $200 a pair. Same pair of shoes.
Yeah.
I can wait till June and December. I can get on a cycle. And
that's that choice, right?
That's
is.
Just, Allen Edmonds shoes. Yeah, and Allen Edmonds shoes never wear out. So you've got them for life, really. And then if they do wear out, you can send them back to Allen Edmonds and they'll completely redo them for $100.
Wow. Great quality.
Yeah. So they're just little things that you can do in the financial realm. And so, I have a married couple that I'm working with right now, and finances was the first thing we talked about. And one of the things that was interesting is the disparity between the way the two of them thought about finances. So we talked through that, got them off of 2 pages and onto 1.
What does a 1 page look like that really sets people up for valuing themselves, for making great choices? What's the how?
Well, the 1 page looks like the two of you have conversations until you make a set of agreements about how you're going to handle your money. You have ground rules, and the ground rules will include, you have a budget, you have an emergency fund, you have investments, you have a break-even point, and you understand that. you are managing debt, which is you don't want any.
Hmm.
If you get a credit card, you want to pay the credit card off at the end of every month and then get one of those credit cards that gives you airline miles so you can get a free vacation. You put all your bills on a credit card and then you pay it off every month and you get a free vacation because they give you miles. And you're going to pay your taxes. If you've got a mortgage, you're going to pay it every 2 weeks instead of every month because it pays off faster that way. There's just so many little things that you can do. And these become values.
Right.
You know, what is a value? It's an idea that you use that's based on principle as a guideline for living. And so when, you know, and look, when you have values, every once in a while you'll stray from them. But if you have them, you'll have something to come back to.
Right.
If you don't have them, then you're going to be wandering all over the forest. And that's not a good idea.
So, Rory, as we really just dive into the power of relationships and that currency of finances, what are some common performance barriers from your experience in life that have really shown up financially for people?
Well, I think one thing is they trust people who don't know anything about finances.
Okay.
And just to give you an example, you know, I have worked with brokers, financial brokers, and they're the supposed experts about helping you manage your money. The thing about brokers is they always get paid even if you lose money.
Right.
That makes no sense to me. They get 5% immediately. So now you have to make 15% to get 10%. That makes no sense to me.
So, Rory, if my performance barrier is not really knowing what to do with my money from a start perspective, from an investment perspective, what's the action to change?
Talk to somebody who knows what they're doing.
How do we figure that out?
You don't. You just start asking questions.
Okay.
And
What
so
questions should we be asking?
So for example, I sat down with a guy, and this was at a time when I was getting 5% on my money. And I said, you know what, I'm looking to get 10 or 20% on my money. How do you invest your money? And he said, I don't want to tell you. And I said, why is that? He said, because if I tell you, you aren't going to do what I say anyway.
Hmm.
And I said, okay, have you ever been punched in the face? So anyway, after we go through the little dance, he says, well, I'm going to give you 2 books. And I want you to read the books and call me with questions. Well, the books were The Common Sense Guide to the Little Book of Common Sense Investing by Bogle, which I mentioned earlier. And then another book by some of Bogle's students called the Bogle Heads. So I read the 2 books, and then I called him and asked him, and he told me about index funds. And so he said, now, if you invest in them, you put your money in and you forget it.
Right.
Then he just starts sending me a lot of articles about it. And one of the articles was a bet that Warren Buffett had with a hedge fund manager who picks stocks. And Warren Buffett crushed the guy in the bet. And he said, if you don't know anything about stocks, invest in index funds. So I did that. So this guy taught me from me asking one single question: how do you invest your money? And so you're asking successful people, and they'll tell you, and then you experiment and do what they say. And that's what we always do.
Right.
We want to do something, we find a way to do it, we experiment, and we make a real simple assessment. Did it work or didn't it? And if it works, keep doing it. If it doesn't work, do something else.
Find another person to talk to, right? I mean, keep talking until you find a person that really resonates and you figure out a winning strategy for you.
There's somebody that knows how to make 50% a year on their money. I have not run into them yet, but it's not because I'm not asking questions. I keep asking, and I know there's going to be somebody who's going to tell me, yeah, you know what I do is I had $100,000 and I bought a laundromat, and it gives me $100,000 a year. So I paid for my investment in a year. And then after all expenses and everything and repairs and all that, I make $100,000 a year on the laundromat. And that's not something I would have ever thought of.
Right.
Or there are people who own ice machines all around the city, and they make bank.
Yeah.
I'd have never thought of that. But when you ask people what they do to make income, they're all these non-standard things that people do. And these are common people.
Right.
These are not wealthy people. And I'm from Chicago, and Chicago is the number one city with the city with the largest Polish population outside of Warsaw, Poland. And so you get a guy who comes over from Poland. These are the parents of people I went to school with, and they'll buy a 3-flat. They'll live in 1 flat, they'll rent 2 out, and they'll pay it off as fast as they can. They'll pay it off in 5 years. Now they own it, and then they'll go buy a 6-flat. They'll live in one of them, do the 5 and rent the 3. And then in 10 years, they have 9 units completely paid for. That's bringing them income.
Right.
0 education, didn't graduate from 8th grade, but they just have chosen to be smart with their money. They work, they invest it, they work on something, and in 10 years, a magic happens. Yeah. Not hard. Be sitting around watching TV.
Okay, let's talk other performance barriers. What's another performance barrier?
So elaborate a little more. A performance barrier to
having success financially, personally, professionally, and philanthropically.
Well, one of the things is when we don't figure out what the tax laws will do to help us.
Okay.
All right. So let's say you make $100,000 a year. You're going to give 30,000 of it to the government, right? Maybe 35,000. Well, there are things that you can do legally to bring some of that 35,000 back to you.
Right.
Well, there are books that have been written about how to do that, so that you could make $100,000 and keep $100,000. Would that be okay?
So, team, action to change, education, talk to people, read, research. I mean, notice just everything about our conversation today has been about figure out what you want, talk to people about it, find out how other successful people have done what you want to do, and then go for it in a way that you've got this support team around you that is not just all about you, but it's about you learning from the people that you trust and that they are there to help you from that perspective as well. So I've just learned a lot today. I hope our team has. Rory, thank you so much for being on this conversation for Champion Change and really just anchoring into the power of relationships, that currency that we have with finances, and understanding to make it for us rather than just giving it away and having it be something that isn't anchored in our values or isn't there for us to really be able to live the life that we want based on the amount of work we're willing to dive in and make happen. So words of wisdom as we sign off today.
Yeah, so I think that we'll call this one Financial Advice from the Ghetto Boy.
Okay. Fantastic title. And you know what? There's more to come. Rory and I are doing a series on relationships, and we have started with finances because we believe that's such a fundamental in terms of really working on it. So enjoy, go practice, really making your financial life a 10. Personally, what matters to you from a place of significance, professionally for success, and philanthropically as a champion giver. And we look forward to talking to you again about more relationships. So thank you, Rory, and have a 10 week, and thank you for your great words of wisdom.
Thank you, Carlette. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for listening. We'd like to get you coached up, so head over to iTunes and Spotify and hit subscribe. And remember, a champion life is a 10 life. You and your life matter. Create a life that you love, give hope to others, and be and choose nothing but 10s. Be you, the world needs you. Go to lifetrainingacademy.com to start your training and get coached.